If you think an empath who goes silent after narcissistic abuse is weak, you've completely misunderstood what strength actually looks like. What you're witnessing isn't defeat. It's the most intelligent form of survival you'll ever see. Look, you have to understand something fundamental about what happens when an empath encounters prolonged narcissistic abuse. This isn't some trivial matter of feeling a bit tired or needing a weekend to recover. We're talking about a complete depletion of your psychological and physiological resources at the most profound level. Your nervous system has been operating in a state of hypervigilance for months or years, constantly scanning for threats, constantly trying to predict the unpredictable, constantly attempting to manage the unmanageable moods and manipulations of someone who fundamentally cannot be satisfied. Think about what that means practically. Every single day you've been giving and giving and giving, pouring your energy into a bottomless void. You've been the emotional regulator not just for yourself, but for another person who refuses to regulate themselves. You've absorbed their anger, their criticism, their projections, their blame. You've twisted yourself into impossible shapes, trying to be good enough, trying to prevent the next outburst, trying to maintain some semblance of peace. And here's the thing that people who haven't experienced this simply cannot grasp. Empaths don't just feel their own emotions. They're literally processing the emotional states of those around them. And when you're with a narcissist, you're processing toxicity, chaos, and deliberate cruelty disguised as love. Your body keeps the score, as they say. Every interaction where you were gaslit, every moment where your reality was denied, every time you were told you were too sensitive or imagining things or overreacting, your nervous system registered that as a threat. Because it was a threat. It was a threat to your sense of reality, to your ability to trust yourself, to your fundamental understanding of what's true. And your body responded the way bodies respond to threats, with cortisol, with adrenaline, with the entire stress response system activating again and again and again. Now multiply that by hundreds or thousands of interactions. Your adrenal glands have been working overtime. Your sleep has been disrupted because you can't fully relax even in your own home. You've been walking on eggshells, managing your own emotions while simultaneously managing theirs, predicting their needs, avoiding their triggers, and still somehow it's never enough. You're blamed for their bad moods. You're responsible for their happiness. You're the reason everything goes wrong, or so they tell you. And part of you starts to believe it because the manipulation is that insidious. This is why your energy tank doesn't just run low. It hits absolute zero. It goes into negative territory. You're running on fumes, and then you're running on the emergency reserves, and then those are gone too. And still you kept going because that's what empaths do. You kept trying to fix it, to heal them, to love them enough that they'd change. But you cannot love someone into health when they're committed to their pathology. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and yet you tried, didn't you? You tried until there was nothing left. The exhaustion that follows narcissistic abuse isn't laziness. It isn't weakness. It isn't depression in the clinical sense, though it can certainly trigger that. It's a rational response to an irrational situation. Your body is forcing you to stop because you wouldn't stop voluntarily. Your psyche is shutting down non-essential systems because it needs to direct every available resource toward basic survival and repair. You're not choosing to be exhausted. You're experiencing the inevitable consequence of sustained psychological warfare. And here's what you need to understand about energy. It's not infinite. You can't just think positive thoughts and manifest more of it. You can't push through this the way you might push through a difficult workout or a challenging project at work. This exhaustion is your body telling you that real damage has occurred and real healing needs to happen. The mitochondria in your cells have been stressed. Your neurotransmitter systems have been dysregulated. Your gut health has likely been compromised because stress destroys gut function. Your immune system has been suppressed. This is biological reality, not metaphor. So when you go silent and stay home, you're not giving up. You're finally listening to what your body has been screaming at you for months or years. You're finally honoring the truth that you've been depleted beyond measure and that recovery requires withdrawal from the very things and people and situations that depleted you. This is wisdom, not weakness. This is self-preservation, not selfishness. You're creating the conditions necessary for regeneration. The world will tell you to get back out there, to move on, to not let them win, to show how strong you are. But real strength sometimes looks like lying in bed at 3 p.m, because that's what your nervous system needs. Real courage sometimes looks like saying no to social obligations because you don't have the energy to pretend you're okay. Real resilience sometimes looks like absolute stillness while your body does the invisible work of knitting itself back together. Your energy will return, but it returns through rest, through safety, through the painstaking work of reestablishing boundaries and reconnecting with your authentic self. It returns when you stop forcing it and start allowing it. It returns when you treat yourself with the same compassion you so freely gave to someone who didn't deserve it. The silence isn't permanent. The isolation isn't forever. But right now, in this moment, it's exactly what you need. And there's profound wisdom in honoring that need without judgment or shame. You need to understand something absolutely critical here. When you've been subjected to prolonged gaslighting and manipulation, what's been attacked isn't just your feelings or your self-esteem. What's been systematically dismantled is your basic cognitive function, your ability to trust your own perception of reality. And this is perhaps the most insidious form of psychological abuse, because it strikes at the very foundation of your being. Without the ability to trust what you see, what you hear, what you experience, you become unmoored from reality itself. You become dependent on the abuser to tell you what's real and what isn't, and that's precisely the point. That's the mechanism of control. Think about what happens in your daily interactions with a narcissist. You witness them doing something hurtful. You experience pain. You bring it up, and suddenly you're told it never happened. Or it happened, but you're remembering it wrong. Or it happened, but you're too sensitive. Or it happened, but actually you caused it. Or you're crazy for even thinking it was a problem. Day after day, month after month, your direct experience of reality is contradicted, denied, twisted, and thrown back at you as evidence of your own defectiveness. This isn't a simple disagreement about facts. This is a sustained assault on your sanity. Your brain is trying to reconcile two contradictory pieces of information. On one hand, you have your direct sensory experience, your memory, your gut feeling that something wrong just occurred. On the other hand, you have someone you love, someone you trust or trusted, telling you with absolute conviction that your experience is false. And here's the terrible bind. If you believe yourself, you have to accept that this person is lying to you, manipulating you, potentially dangerous to you. But if you believe them, you have to accept that you can't trust your own mind, your own perception, your own memory. Both options are terrifying, but the second one becomes the path of least resistance because it allows you to maintain the relationship, maintain the hope that things will get better, maintain the illusion of safety. So you start doubting yourself. You start second-guessing every thought, every feeling, every observation. Before you speak up about something that bothered you, you rehearse it 20 times in your head, trying to make sure you're being fair, trying to make sure you're not overreacting, trying to anticipate all the ways they'll twist your words. You start keeping records, writing things down, because you can't trust your own memory anymore. You find yourself constantly confused, constantly uncertain, constantly anxious because you've lost the ability to navigate reality with confidence. This is what makes rebuilding trust in your own perception so monumentally difficult and so absolutely essential. You're not just healing from hurt feelings. You're reconstructing your entire epistemological framework. You're having to relearn how to know what you know. And this takes time. This takes conscious effort. This takes courage because you're going to get it wrong sometimes as you're recalibrating, and that's going to feel like confirmation that maybe you really can't trust yourself. But here's what you need to hear. Your perception was right all along. When you felt manipulated, you were being manipulated. When you sensed cruelty beneath the words, there was cruelty there. When your gut told you something was off, something was off. Your instincts were functioning perfectly. What happened was that those accurate perceptions were being deliberately undermined by someone who needed you to doubt yourself in order to maintain control over you. The problem wasn't your perception. The problem was that you were in an environment where truth was treated as a threat. Rebuilding starts with small acts of self-validation. It starts with noticing what you're experiencing and allowing it to be true without immediately questioning it or dismissing it. If you feel uncomfortable, you feel uncomfortable. Full stop. You don't need to justify it, explain it, or determine whether it's reasonable. You're simply gathering data about your internal state. If something seems wrong to you, it seems wrong to you. That's valuable information. You don't need external confirmation to make your experience real. This is harder than it sounds because you've been trained to outsource your reality testing to someone else. You've been trained to believe that your perceptions only become valid when someone else agrees with them. But that's not how perception works. That's not how consciousness works. Your subjective experience is the most immediate, most direct form of knowledge you have access to. It's the ground floor of all other knowledge. When you can't trust that, you can't trust anything. Start documenting your thoughts and feelings without judgment. Write down what happened from your perspective. Notice when you start minimizing or explaining away your own experience. Notice when you start adopting the language of your abuser to describe yourself. These are patterns you can interrupt once you become aware of them. Every time you catch yourself saying internally, "Maybe I'm just being too sensitive," pause and ask yourself, "Who taught me to think that way? Whose interest does it serve for me to doubt my own reactions?"